started. So quick agenda review. We're going to do a brief panelist introduction, participant introductions in the chat if y'all are able to use that. And then we will get right into the meat of the webinar, which is grants and fundraising, which will be facilitated by Leslie. So I'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Tessa Weinecke, she, her with Open Circle Studio. I'm the working group coordinator for CAN, and I'm here to just provide some background support. So I'll be monitoring the chat and checking for any questions. And let's do Kathleen, Leslie, and then Bill and Brennan.
Thanks, Tessa. So my name is Kathleen Terry Baker. I am the CEO of Appalachian Sustainable Development and also I would say the co-chair of the Processing, Aggregation, and Distribution Working Group, but right now we're missing one, so I'm it for the moment. Super excited for this group today. I think learning about funding opportunities and how to access them is pretty vital for everyone. So really appreciate everyone being willing and able to join us today, and really looking forward to the conversation. And thank you, Leslie, for being the MC extraordinaire. So I will turn it over to you.
It would be helpful if I could unmute quickly. So welcome, everyone. I'm Leslie Schaller. I'm the Director of Programs at the Appalachian Center for Economic Networks. And I think we might be having some problems with people joining this link. So I know some of my staff, I just forwarded the link again, Tessa. So we might see more people showing up in the waiting room at first. So I would say we might as well go ahead since we're recording this information, and I know people have resources to share as well. But before we go to our presenters or our experts, I'm wondering if our friends from Craft would also like to introduce themselves. So Laura, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, folks. I am Laura Valentine. I'm the Food Systems Research Program Manager at CRAFT, which is the Center for Regional Agriculture, Food, and Transformation. We are located just north of Pittsburgh. We are a partner in the Appalachia Regional Food Business Center and very pleased to be here today.
And then just a big shout out to Craft as well for helping us host this webinar. So it looks like, as I look at the participant list, that people are entering. So I'm going to suggest we get started today. Again, I think what's really important for these peer learning calls is for us to be pretty conversational. Although I'm going to break that rule, and I do have slides that I will show at the end. But I'm going to let my good friend Bill Woodrum and my new friend Brennan Washington get us started. And I'm wondering, Brennan, if you would like to go first, talk a little bit about SARE. I know many of the folks on the call today have utilized SARE programs over the years. CAN straddles a number of different SARE areas. So maybe you could talk a little bit about your coverage as well. I work with Sean mostly because I'm in Ohio. But why don't you take it away, Brennan?
Okay, thanks for having me today to speak with you and your cohort about the SARE program. So SARE stands for Sustainable Agriculture and Research Education, and it's probably the preeminent way that we're funding research and education around sustainable agriculture throughout the country. I need to explain a little bit about how SARE is set up before I tell you about some of the funding opportunities. While we get our money from the USDA through the National Food, through NIFA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, we are not a USDA agency. So some 40 years ago, the decision was made to embed SARE throughout the United States in 4 different regions: Southern, Northeast, North Central, and the West. And rather than it being a USDA agency, the funding is given to a land-grant university and some partners in each region to operate the program. And I looked at the CAN website before I came on, and it looks like most of the states that you're working in are covered by the Southern region and by the North Central region. So the money's given to a host institution. In the case of the North Central region, that's the University of Minnesota. In the case of the Southern region, it's the University of Georgia in partnership with Fort Valley State University in Georgia and the Kerr Center in Oklahoma. Each region runs itself autonomously. So while we have to follow a general set of rules around grant making and what we do with our funding, each region sets the tone for how they will run the program within their specific region. And that's done and governed by what we call administrative councils. And our administrative councils, and this is one that I've been involved with the SARE program for close to 2 decades now. The thing I love about the SARE program is how farmer and producer centric it is. So these administrative councils are staffed and by many of the people like you on the call, farmers, ranchers. At least 1/3 of each administrative council are producers, farmers or ranchers, and that type of stuff. We also have representation from land grants in terms of research and extension. We do have some federal agency membership, and we do have agribusiness and NGO representations as well. So I'll give a general overview of just what our programs are, but keep in mind the program will vary and be called different things as you go from region to region. So, and I'll just use the Southern region, but keep in mind that some of the funding that I'm going to talk about is pretty much available in every region. It might not be called what I'm going to call it today, it may be called something else. And then some regions just have different programs that's unique to their region. So one of the foundational grants of Southern SARE, what we call our producer grants. And these are grants that are given directly to farmers to do, producers to do their own self-directed research on their farm. And a lot of times when I do a lot of speaking and a lot of times when I mention research, the farmers, their eyes roll back up in their heads, but all farmers are researchers. You may not know it, but you are. You're either trying a new way to combat a pest problem that you might be having, or you might be wanting to try a new crop that's new to your area and do a variety of trial. Well, SARE's probably the only organization where you can turn to funds to do that own self-directed research. And those are called producer grants. I think in some of the other regions, they call them farmer grants. But just know that it's money that farmers can apply directly to do their own self-directed research. And some of the things we funded a lot of the small ruminant research throughout the Southeast, so a lot of it in Appalachia through Kentucky State and that type of stuff. We've had farmers do research on the Virgin Islands in Puerto Rico as part of my territory. There was a farmer down there who was doing some value-added products that were used specifically for medicinal purposes, and the key ingredient was lemongrass. And she wanted to find out which variety of lemongrass gave her the best bang for the buck to do for the medicinal properties she was looking for. So she applied for a producer grant, was successful in getting that and being able to do the research. The sister grant to that is what we call in the South our on-farm research grant. And that's pretty much the same grant as the producer grant, with one important difference. The farmer is not the project lead and not the lead researcher is not heading up the project. It is actually being done by a third party. It could be an NGO, it could be a land grant university personnel, it could even be an agribusiness. But that third party is carrying out the research on that farmer's farm. So some farmers may not want to do research, but have an interest in having a project done around a specific area of interest. They can work with a land grant and say, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem. Can you come do this project on my farm? One of those that's happening now here in the South is looking at the production of saffron and as a commercial herb here in the South. And they're doing that, working with a couple of farms throughout the state of Georgia on that. A few years ago, we got chastised by our NGO partners because what they were saying is that um, all of our grants had to have a research component, and a lot of our NGO partners said, well, that's not what we do. We do education and teaching. And by you having that in there, you're shutting us off from funding. So we were tasked to come back and see if it was true. And most of the regions said, yeah, that is true. So we now have an education grant, which is a standalone grant that can be used up to $50,000 to do any type of educational program. Usually the program is up to 2 years, a year and a half to 2 years. And we funded quite a bit of stuff. We funded trainings on agritourism. We've actually funded some projects that had to do with grant writing. But that's been helping, especially our NGO partners, fill an important niche in accessing funding to do educational work and help support the work that they are. And they go up to about $50,000. The producer grants go up to 15,000, 20,000 if you involve another farmer in it. And the on-farm research is 20, up to 20 and 25, depending on how many farmers involved in it. Our next important project, grant program is our professional development program. And that program, this is what we call our trainer grants. So it's not meant to train farmers directly. It's meant to train people who are going to be training farmers. So you can apply for up to $80,000 to do work around working with, let's say had a bunch of folks, and there's a big push on right now throughout the United States and trying to really institute some sustainable small scale meat processing throughout the country. And so we've funded several grants that folks have gotten to help train people who are now going out and training people on how to run a processing facility, what should you look for in your cuts of meat, that type of stuff. So we do have those available. And our flagship grant is our research and education grant. They go up to about $400,000. And those are our hard science-based research projects that span up to 3 years. And some examples that we've done recently, we've got one, there's a guy out of South Carolina who got one to institute a research project around agritourism in the mountains of Puerto Rico, looking at seeing if helping those farmers understand and implement agritourism practices on their farm can increase their livelihoods. Like I said, we funded quite a bit of small ruminant research throughout that, and a lot of that was Appalachia. A recent one that comes right to mind is Fort Valley State in Georgia looked at pelletizing Lespedeza grass into pellets so they can turn it into actual feed. So those are those types, and usually those are tackled by fairly large NGOs and land grant universities and other types of universities because they have the research staff and facilities to have that. We always ask, though, that those projects, even though they're being carried out by a university, that they get farmer buy-in in the development of the project and that they have farmer involvement in the project. And we verify that through contacting the farmers. So it's not a case of where folks can come in and put your name on a piece of paper and say you're involved in the project. No, we once those applications come in and submit it, we make sure that the folks who are listed in that application truly are involved in it. All of our applications are peer reviewed, both by our administrative counsel and by technical reviewers who are experts in the field. A good way to get involved with the SARE program is, volunteer to become a reviewer. And so you can see the type of projects that we do and also what separates a well-written grant from one that's not so well-written. And but the grants are then pulled in, looked over by a team of reviewers, and then we go ahead and make decisions. And we've been trying to tackle, all of the regions have been trying to tackle, for example, a lot of our money, well, all of our money is federal, and a lot of federal guidelines say we have to reimburse, we have to pay on a reimbursement basis, which can be difficult for farmers sometimes. But we've slowly been working out mechanisms where we can change that. So if you've got a $15,000 producer grant and it's going to cost you $5,000 to get started, you just don't have that $5,000. We're starting to put procedures into place to allow you to access that funding earlier in the cycle without having to show that you've actually spent any money. And that's a 15-minute intro into the SARE program. The other couple of things we do, the South is big with it. The other regions do it to a little bit lesser extent, but in the South we do quite a bit. And that's when we get deobligated funding that wasn't used for one reason or another. We put it in a pot of two things. We sponsor conferences and educational events. So I don't know if any of you on the call had an opportunity to attend the South Conference that was held in Atlanta. It was a big sustainable ag research conference that was held in Atlanta back in February. But we put up a lot of money to help fund that, and we fund little events, small and little and medium-sized events with money. And we also provide what we call travel scholarships for folks who conference is expensive, y'all. I'm not gonna lie. And sometimes it's a case of farmers want to get somewhere that's just not in the budget. So we have mechanisms where you can apply to us to see if we have funding to enable you to attend those type of events. Now it varies from region to region. Like I said, we probably have the most robust program out of the 4 regions, but other regions do it. So. And there's also our resources. You can go to our website and look at our educational resources. And we just have a ton of great books and topic bulletins and stuff like that that you can just pull down if you ever need hard copies of the stuff. And they're actual books. You can go ahead and order them. Or Leslie, I also have these wonderful little thumb drives that have all of our publications on them. And so if after this call, if you'll send me your address, I'll send you a bunch of them that you can hand out to your members. So
That sounds wonderful, Brennan. We have, as you know, a Central Appalachian Network website. So a lot of times we're looking for additional resources to add to the CAN website. And again, I think, specifically for you getting to know us a little bit more, many of our anchor organizations or even emerging organizations that work with farmers and food producers are within your region. So hopefully this will be another introduction that will help them get connected to you as well. There is a good amount of emphasis right now on meat processing with a number of the CAN participants. So I'm sure they'll be reaching out to you as well. And then I'm just fascinated. I work with a lot of culinary artists and restaurants. So when you talked about saffron, it's like, oh, wow, that sounds really interesting. And it sounds like you're have a lot of innovation with various crops in your program
Yeah,
supports.
yeah. Another interesting, this one was funded in Tennessee, I'm gonna say about 6, 7 years ago. But there's a young lady there who got one of her producer grant again, who started bringing back indigo. And actually, they had gotten their indigo production up. She was trialing different varieties of indigo, and I had read in a magazine where she's actually selling the dyes to some gene companies. And there's a African American farmer here in Georgia who's bringing back fiber shed type stuff, and she's working with a bunch of natural dyes and coloring. So, be creative when you're looking at your grants. Just don't think it's about putting seeds in the ground and tending to your livestock. We're pretty flexible in the stuff that we'll fund.
Cool. Thanks so much, Brennan. And thanks for sticking with us. I'm asking or encouraging people again, friendly reminder, if you have questions that are sparking by these conversations, please put them in the chat so that we make sure we get everyone's questions answered before we end the call today. So now I am particularly delighted to introduce Bill Woodrum. Bill and I go way back. He's worn so many different hats within this food and ag space. So he personifies for me the word expert in many ways. But Bill is here today to talk about the Benedum Foundation. We know that there's particular pressure on our funders right now with the uncertainty in federal funding. So we especially appreciate Bill taking the time because the pressure is real. So Bill, why don't you talk a little bit about maybe your history and then talk about Benedum?
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. Excited to be with the CAN group. Obviously aware of your work now over the last 15, 20 years. Just always super impressed when I've had a chance to interact. In a way that I love to say, I'm from all over Central Appalachia, grew up in West Virginia and attended college here, went to Ohio State for my master's in ag, worked for a while for the university in cooperative extension before coming back to West Virginia and holding a variety of positions here. So, and I will say, not that this is a mutual admiration club, but I've always been inspired by the work of Leslie Schaller. One of the best and a great member of this network. Particular to me, a variety of programs through the years, from a craft beverage trail that we started while I was doing agricultural innovation work at RCBI, to some of the original research that led to the Appalachian Food Corridor there, some ARC money that helped that get some of its initial research and study, all the way up through now, of course, having the pleasure of the last 3 years to work at the Claude Worthington Benedum Foundation, following in the work of some of the local foods funding that the foundation has provided over the last 20 plus years. So for those of you all who don't know the Benedum Foundation, we're an 80-year-old foundation based in Pittsburgh, serving 4 counties in Southwest PA. But the majority of our work is throughout the state of West Virginia, all 55 counties. We funded from what I refer to as the first West Virginia entrepreneur, Mr. Michael Benedum, born into relative poverty just north of Bridgeport, West Virginia, and in his lifetime became one of the 100 wealthiest Americans. He was an oil and gas exploration wildcatter, and over the course of his life was one of the first people to see the potential for oil and gas in Texas, and in 1923 chartered a plane at his own expense and flew to Texas and hit one of the first gas fields in Texas, the Permian gas field that is still producing today. His headquarters was in Pittsburgh for business reasons, but he never forgot being a West Virginian. Michael and Sarah, his wife, lost their only son tragically during World War I to the Spanish flu epidemic. They never had other children, so they amassed a great deal of wealth. And at the end of, as they were looking down the end of their life, decided that they wanted to create a foundation that would be located in their business home, which was Pittsburgh, but really focus on giving in West Virginia. And for 80 years now, the foundation has been making grants throughout the state. We just celebrated our 80th anniversary last fall. And over that time in the state of West Virginia and Pennsylvania, we've given out about $600 million. So we fund in really 3 verticals. And one of those is education, one of those is health, and then I have the pleasure of working with our community and economic development efforts, which take a few different meandering paths, but one of those is definitely into local foods in our area. We really consider that a critical component, not only of the community development and having healthy communities, but a very economic development centered program that tries to keep circular dollars in our economy and build resilient communities throughout the state, whether it's a large city or the smaller towns that dot West Virginia, really helping people have money that's created in our community, stays in our community, and circulates through our community. We feel like that's an important role that local foods play in my portfolio. Our health portfolio, I will say, also funds a lot of food as medicine and food as pharmacy programs over the years, really looking at access to healthy foods as not only a viable economic term, but necessary in order to create healthy citizens. I think one of the leading programs in the country right now, and it is not my program, so I don't have a lot of hubris in saying that, but the central kitchen work that's going on out of Morgantown, if you haven't heard of them, they're doing just amazing work in sourcing local and creating healthy foods for early childcare education sites, serving hundreds of meals a day, and doing it all, like grinding their own wheat that they've grown into flour, making all their food with no more than 3, maybe 4 ingredients, sneaking in fiber wherever they can, putting black beans into things like brownies so that they're a source of fiber, putting sweet potatoes into cookies so that they're, again, not quite as sweet, not heavy on the sugar. A really innovative nutrition-based program supported by, in West Virginia, the West Virginia Food and Farm Coalition and a lot of other agricultural programs, but really heavy forward on nutrition and access to healthy food. Some of the programs we've funded that relate to our local foods in West Virginia are our West Virginia Farmers Market Association, trying to help them drive new members and build up larger members over the last year and a half, and they've really been successful in growing that membership. A specific program was Stepping Stones, which is a foster care program in Huntington that allowed them to develop their own brand and sell in produce that they had grown at the Wild Ramp local foods market in Huntington. Grow Ohio Valley, I saw Jody was on the call. We've helped them build their capacity at their market and leverage some of their federal rewards. A great example is, it doesn't always have to be big and flashy. We work with the Economic Development Greater East, the EDGE group down in McDowell County, on a farm apprenticeship program and helping them develop and extend to markets outside of West Virginia. We've worked with the Capital Market, helping them develop their outdoor area in a manner to attract new and young farmers, because sometimes it can be a little overwhelming to try and go through the process of getting into one of those large markets. So they have an area now that's more rotational, where you don't have to commit for a summer. You can come in for a shorter period of time and really help some of those young and new farmers gain that sales point. One of the newest efforts we've funded is at Riverhawk Farm, a part of WVU Parkersburg. They have an aggregation program that is a micro-credential program for high school students in the area around Parkersburg, kind of generously on both sides of the river around Parkersburg, where they bring them in for summer apprenticeship service, and they get several weeks of experience on farm. We worked last year when the CAN network came to Huntington. We were a proud sponsor of that meeting. And we don't always do, I think, as Brandon talked, we don't always do what I would consider traditional ag. We've done a lot of work with Future Generations University and the U Center on some of their non-timber forest products, the Mountain Medicine Trail, things like syrup products that, really have built a small market here in the state of West Virginia over the last several years that probably 10 or 12 years ago, you wouldn't have really thought of West Virginia maple syrup, walnut syrup, sycamore syrup as being a product that was widely distributed and made, but really has added some income for several of our farmers. As most of you know, we deal with a substantial woodlot on most West Virginia farms. About 60% of our farms tend to be woodlot. The U Mountain Center helping people stand up the medicinal trail with herbs and botanicals that can be grown and harvested sustainably in the forest. And then, some, again, workforce pieces. We're working with a group called Community Access, who's working with exceptional ed students in our high schools to provide workforce experiences and then get them out into programs at our state parks and other places for summer employment, where they get to apply, really work with their hands, get into the dirt and really enjoy and see some upward paths there. So, those are where some of our emphasis have been. As we all know, I say, I finish a lot of my talks nowadays with, but other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the rest of the play? Because it's a tough time for all of us. There is no direct and easy path. The Benedum Foundation, as I mentioned, has given out about $600 million over the course of its 80-year existence. We heard a stat from Ryan Eller at the Appalachia Funders Network a couple weeks ago that if all the foundations in Appalachia spent every bit of the corpus of their investments, it would hold all of our nonprofits for about 6 to 8 weeks. And that's if we spin it out and closed it down, every one of them. It's about 6 to 8 weeks of funding is what, as an entire region, we have. So, there are no easy solutions to the government situation right now. I do, people have heard me talk, we do stay true to the words that Mr. Benedum wrote in his codicil. That's on our website. You can go see that. We're not backing away from our work with food access, with digital access and equity, with those words that I know several of you all have to be careful about putting in applications now. The foundation is true to what we've always been. And for 80 years, we're the same foundation. We've always been. The investments have looked different through the years, whether it was scholarships or physical investments. We built a lot of Benedum halls in the early years, and over the last 25 years or so, a lot of programmatic investment. But we do stay true to where we are. We can't backfill the federal government lawsuits that some of you all have had. And I mean, that's obvious, I think, to everybody. But we are here as a partner still. And if there's an opportunity for, if you're a West Virginia with me, or, if you're in Appalachian, Kentucky, the Foundation for Appalachian, Kentucky, I know in Ohio, Sugar Bush has done a lot of work on food access and equity. Get to know not just Benedum, but get to know the other funders in your area. As a funding group, we are aware of what's going on and feel it on a really heavy level. I would be, my short advice is be engaging with your foundations right now, see where they're at. See if there is funding availability. Again, they're not going to be able to backfill probably an entire AmeriCorps member for you. Probably not going to be able to backfill 3 or 4 or 5 salaried positions, but maybe there's something that they can do. Maybe there's an engagement that we can look at. And I guess my other piece, just as we're coming to the table, is look beyond Appalachia. Most of the philanthropic money spent in Appalachia does not originate in Appalachia. It comes from outside organizations. And sometimes you've got to be a little creative, I think, in looking at those, staying true to their mission, being answerable to their question. But, Robert Wood Johnson just put out a new pot of money that I think has a lot of implications for equitable food. It's about health. It doesn't say food necessarily in the title of it, but it is about how do we increase health outcomes in the United States. obviously access to healthy food is one of those things. So I think it's looking and being aware of resources, and sometimes maybe trying to fit, a slightly rounded or a slightly square peg into a slightly rounded hole. It's not always a perfect fit. But that's where you reach out to a program officer. That's where you reach out to a foundation and give them an honest pitch. And I can tell you that's from the philanthropy side. What we want you to be most often is just honest with us. Tell us where you're coming from, what you're trying to do, and we'll tell you if that's a meetup with our goals and our, what our board of trustees tell us where they want to be investing. And I can tell you what I didn't know before I came to this job is I have to say no a lot more than I say yes. So don't ever take those things personally. It is not ever intended that way. And usually, and most times we've been able to suggest other ways to go for the funding, and we still try and do that. It's very rarely at the Benedum Foundation, just no and go away. It's no, have you considered this? No, maybe we can look here. No, can I introduce you to somebody here? So, I think that's about my time. I don't want to ramble on too long. I do, not that I ever would seek to speak for philanthropy, and I still have a hard time after 30 years on the other side of the bench, sometimes realizing I'm on this side of it. But, foundations are trying to find our way through this with you all, and find where we can help, find what we can do, and find out where we can be supportive. So reach out and talk. I mean, that's, that's what we're here for, is to be a support to the good work that you all are doing in the communities. Mr. Benedum had an idea that, we didn't know where any seed would fall. We didn't know where, his actual quote is, we don't know where a seed may sprout, and the poorest and most unregarded child who seems to be abandoned, but there may slumber virtue, intellect, and genius. So it's our duty to sow and nurture and leave it to others to harvest the fruit of our efforts. So really an agricultural application, but it's how he described the work that we're supposed to do, his vision for what the work of the foundation would be. And after 80 years, we're still trying to do that every day.
Thanks so much, Bill. And again, I just want to really notice the role that you've particularly played transitioning from being a practitioner for many years now to being a funder. And really, Mary Hunt before you, all the staff of Benedum, all these years, in many ways, you've played a mentoring role. Oftentimes I feel like we as the organizational practitioners can benefit almost as mentees from the mentorship we receive from a lot of the leadership within philanthropy. And Benedum has always, I would say, occupied that space and been a model to a lot of the other local foundations throughout Central Appalachia. And then really appreciate your shout out to the Appalachian Funders Network. We know that we're all in this together. We certainly, I think, pivoted and found new solutions, new innovations during COVID. And I feel as peers were in that same space. It's maybe a slightly different landscape, maybe with certainly different consequences,
Yeah,
but definitely appreciate that role.
Thank you, Leslie. And I said I'm old enough now that I think I was telling Catlin this when we were together a couple of weeks ago. I saw this in the 80s with the tech bubble burst, in the early 90s, of course, or the early 2000s with 9/11, the late 2000s with the housing bubble burst. This one feels a little different, I think, because of the way it's occurring. But we've all, and through all those early ones, I was on the practitioner side, writing grants and scrambling to keep organizations alive. But we come through them, and we come through them together. And a lot of times we see innovations come out of these times that are they're new and novel ways of partnership. That building around an ecosystem, building around the services. Anybody who's heard me talk is probably tired of me saying ecosystem, and I think CAN's a great example of that. How you build out. Not just one organization is ever going to ride forward in its shining armor and save us all. We've all got that role. We've all got a place to play. We've all got to find our piece of that. And so it really is an ecosystem that helps, or a network that helps get the work done.
Yeah, thanks so much again, Bill. So I'm going to pivot here and I'll apologize immediately. I'm just going to show some slides because they just have a lot of bulleted lists, and all of that will be PDF'd and shared with everyone who's interested. We had invited Lillian Brislin, many of you know Lillian, at USDA AMS, and last week she said yes and was looking forward to joining us today. But this morning we got some email and she found found out that it maybe wasn't appropriate for her to join us today from her I would say higher folks on the organizational chart at USDA AMS. That said, we know that we're in uncertain times. We know that many of our organizations have benefited spectacularly, quite frankly, from USDA funding. So I was just going to do sort of a little modified slideshow that I share quite a bit with my colleagues here on my staff or with our other partners. And basically, it's just sort of a summary of some of the hopefully USDA programs that will continue to exist here moving forward. So again, we'll share this. But you know, how does USDA really impact the processing, aggregation, and distribution work? Oftentimes we sometimes say MPAD right now because the marketing and especially exploring more wholesale market channels, I think, are a big intersection between how do we get more regional distribution. You know, number one, how do we feed Appalachia with local food? And then how do we reach even wider audiences throughout the, you know, Atlantic region, the Midwest, maybe nationally. So I think a lot of the USDA funding has really helped us support the program staff. It's provided capital for both infrastructure and equipment. We've had great success as partners within the Central Appalachian Network to secure funding for collaboration. Again, Bill did a great shout out. Many, many years ago, over 10 years ago now, we did research on how do we develop wider regional distribution from Ohio down to Southwest Virginia, you know, and Eastern Tennessee, really impacting West Virginia and Eastern Kentucky as well. So a lot of the cooperative agreements, the collaborative pilots, you know, they've really allowed us to, I think, be innovators throughout Appalachia. And then, as you know, Brennan highlighted, there are different programs out there that fund farmers and local food producers directly. We hope that those programs within USDA survive. So rural development, you'll notice I have this kind of color coordinated. If you're thinking about expansion, maybe of infrastructure, some of the, I would say, highlighted programs within green are probably some of your best bets. We know that the Rural Energy for America program, REAP money had been frozen for a little bit, but seems to be flowing again now for many of the food hubs, the bricks and mortar farmers markets, some of the other shared use manufacturing facilities have been able to now access their REAP awards. ACEnet for many years has utilized the Rural Business Enterprise grants. They've been great for our expansion of our two food facilities here in Athens County. And then the Rural Community Facilities Program has both loans and grants. And then I think many of us have worked with our farmers and other local food producers to really prepare value-added producer grant proposals. Oftentimes they've been very helpful for people to maybe shift from direct markets to more wholesale markets as well. And then probably AMS, Agricultural Marketing Services. Many of us have utilized what we often refer to as the LAMP programs within AMS. That would be the local food promotion program, the farmers market promotion program, and then more recently, I think this is maybe 5 or 6 years old now, the Regional Food System Partnership program, which has also been very helpful for a number of the partners within CAN, particularly working together on wider regional innovation, could be around distribution and workforce development. The Regional Food Business Center, uh, many of us are participants currently in the Appalachian Regional Food Business Center. We know that since January 19th, those reimbursements have been frozen. The program is under review. I would maybe kind of guess that might be the way or reason that Lillian wasn't allowed to join us today, because we might badger her with questions about that. And we know there aren't answers at this point, but it is the last program to be reviewed within AMS. We have a new administrator that was appointed on Tuesday, I think, May 13th. So I'm hoping we're going to see some more momentum there. And the real innovation in terms of this new model across the US of these regional food business centers, and I think particularly the program that we've set up here in Appalachia, is just the amount of money we can get directly into the hands of farmers and food producers. So these business builder subawards were really identified as transformational, and hopefully that money will be coming back. We'll be able to all within Appalachia, but also throughout the US, and all the centers start moving that money. And then the Resilient Food System Infrastructure Program, also relatively new, that was again helping with the infrastructure needs around processing and distribution. That RFSI money is also now unfrozen. It's administered through the various states. I know with regards to ACEnet clients, we have some folks. We are hoping that their awards will be going forward here soon as well. Specialty block grants, the Dairy Business Innovation Initiatives, one of our clients here in the southeastern Ohio area, our Snowville Creamery was able to utilize a Business Innovation Award about a year and a half ago now for their dairy processing expansion. And then the NIF, the NIFA programs, community food projects, can oftentimes help with distribution and aggregation, beginning farmers and ranchers, sustainable ag research and education. Thank you, Brennan, again, for sharing all the information you have already and the links that you put in the chat about SARE. And then we hope the produce prescription programs continue. We have not used, I think, this funding too much in Appalachia, but the AFRI education and workforce development programs are also another, I think, opportunity to fund some of our PAD activities. FNS, Food and Nutrition Services. We have a number of active farm to school grants right now throughout Central Appalachia. Obviously, many of us have worked around healthy food access. You'll notice on the AMS bulleted list, I got rid of LFPA because we know that program is terminated. But I think this is for many of us, especially as we try and distribute more healthy food, work with more farmers to get their products, whether they're fresh or value-added products, into distribution through some of these programs, whether it's SNAP or the pharmacy programs, the produce prescriptions in Ohio. All of these programs are a win-win in terms of feeding community members and also creating new opportunities for sales for our agricultural producers as well. So, again, we just need to keep looking at opportunities there. And we know that some of these programs are certainly probably going to be challenged here as the budget work moves forward. But there's a lot of opportunity making sure that healthy food access is available throughout Central Appalachia. And then NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Resources. We've been able, I think, throughout Appalachia, have farmers utilize the EQUIP program. I know it's been very popular. A number of our larger communities, I think of an area like Huntington or Wheeling in West Virginia, have been able to use the urban agriculture and innovation production grants. And then there's also, other assistance out there as well. What some of these programs will continue to look like is sort of uncertain at this point. But I think the more we as practitioners, particularly, or farmers and producers within the Central Appalachian Network are aware of them, the more we can advocate for their continuance. So I am going to stop sharing the slides. Again, all that information will be available to you. And I do have much longer presentations. One of the things I was invited to do last year was speak at the Agricultural Innovation Conference in DC. And I prepared a presentation that highlighted how practitioners, either as individual anchor organizations or as collaborations, have utilized a lot of this USDA funding, particularly the agricultural marketing services. So for those of you who don't scan grants.gov every day, you might not be aware, but woohoo, the RFSP, the Local Food Promotion Program, the Farmers Market Promotion Program have all been announced. Pretty quick turnaround in terms of the deadline. Those applications are due June 27th. So if you're interested maybe in learning more about some opportunities for collaboration with some of these pending AMS applications with other CAN partners, please start to reach out to the group. Kathleen, as she mentioned, is the only co-chair right now of PAD. So I don't want to say, well, just email Kathleen. I'll raise my hand as well as one of the main, I would say, mover and shakers in terms of what collaborative work we can do together. So if you're interested in learning more about some of those opportunities, reach out to us. Tessa, as our working group coordinator, backbone person, can also refer any emails or questions you might have as well. So I've been kind of monitoring the chat. I'm assuming, Tessa, you probably have done that a little bit as well. We're not leaving, I'm afraid, much time for questions. And I don't know, maybe it might even be easier if people want to come off mute and ask a question directly of either Bill or Brennan.
I was going to say, I saw one Leslie Della ask about funding at the foundations. I mean, obviously, you're exactly right, Della. We're kind of riding the tides right now as markets dip and go up and down. Speaking specifically for the Benedum Foundation, we set a 2-year budget. So there is a little bit more room. We had this year, we're at the second year of a 2-year budget. So we'll see how that happens moving forward. But yeah, I mean, the amount of money we can distribute is based on the percentage of what's in the coffer. So, there's that. And there's discussion now about a higher tax rate for foundations at certain sizes. So just like everywhere, there's a lot of unknowns.
And then Connie, I saw your question about finding maybe other West Virginia producers, a local wheat farmer. One of the mills that we work with that you might be familiar with is Shagbark Seed and Mill in Athens, Ohio. Michelle Ajamian, the owner of Shagbark, has a huge network of folks working in that space. So we could forward that question to Michelle. She also works part-time on the staff of another nonprofit here in Appalachia, Ohio called Rural Action. So she would be a good contact. I keep scanning the questions. And Tessa, I'm assuming the recording is available. So if you came in late or if you missed anything, yes, that resource will be available. Thank you, Bill. Shagbark is great. We love their chips. We love all their products, but I probably eat more chips than I do anything else. How about anyone else? Any other feedback, questions? Did I miss anything, Tessa or Kathleen?
Did we answer the question that's in the Q&A from Tara?
I don't think we have. Let me see. I may have missed that one.
I think you would be ideally positioned to answer that.
Uh-oh. Now I feel set up. Why am I not seeing it?
Hey, Leslie, I can read it to you.
Okay, read it to me.
So there's two questions in the Q&A. Della asks, does market research count as research for SARE? And then the second question is from Tara that says, I will soon be the owner of a co-packing facility. I'm curious as to what funding might be available to me.
Well,
Yes,
I'll let Brennan answer the first question.
yes, market research, as long as it pertains to some aspect of sustainable agriculture, is an allowable project.
Mhm. And also allowable in a value-added producer grant application as well. And then in terms of the co-packing facility, one of my other co-workers here, our Director of Operations, is on the call from ACEnet as well, Adam Cody. So Adam, would you maybe like to unmute and answer the co-packing question, and we can talk a little bit about some of the funding we've utilized over the years also.
Yeah, certainly. So there are certainly options available for co-packing operations. Leslie talked a little bit about the Regional Food Business Center program, which is currently frozen. We are hoping for an imminent thaw on that. Within that program, we have what are known as the Business Builder Subawards. These are up to $100,000 awards made to farmers and small food producers. Any post-harvest activities will be qualified for that, with a lot of flexibility in that funding the way it's currently constructed. Again, that whole program is kind of under review, so we'll see how that all shakes out. But that's the one that comes to mind immediately. Leslie, were there other programs you were thinking of as well?
Yeah, I mean, we've had great success here at ACEnet using the Rural Business Development grants. Again, you'd need to talk to your state director. I'm not sure what state you might be in, but getting to know your friends at Rural Development Office. Again, lots of changes right now in terms of maybe staff transitions within RD offices at the state level, but I would check in to some of those rural development opportunities also, depending on
Virginia did
your
just get our new
population.
RD director within the last 2 weeks.
Who is it, Bill?
John Reisenweber, formerly was economic development director over in the Eastern Panhandle, and formerly on Shelley Moore Capita's staff.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we're in this sort of crazy transition time, and this happens at the beginning of every federal administration changeover as well. So it's not a huge surprise in terms of a lot of these appointed positions, but trying to keep track of who those appointees are who's in some of these offices. It really helps to familiarize and for them to become familiar with you as well.
I would end just put the link for the BBS Business Builder Subawards program into the chat. So again, frozen, but whenever that program, fingers crossed, does thaw out, we're hoping to be pretty hasty about putting another application process online. So monitor that, sign up for the newsletter, and pay attention to that opportunity going forward.
Mm. Yeah, there's social media, Facebook as well. So as soon as we know anything, we will blanket the network with news. So I know we're right at time. Kathleen, do you want to have any parting comments? And then Tessa, you can maybe wrap up our calendar changes, I know in June for our meeting time.
Well, thank you, Leslie. And I appreciate, as always, appreciate y'all's deep experience. Brennan, it's great to meet you, and Bill, good to see you again. I think what I would just say is it's pretty unprecedented times out there, but I think that we can say that we're here to help. Leslie was one of the first people when I became an unfortunate executive director who sent me successful grant applications so that I could finally figure out what I was doing. And so, you need that help. And so I wouldn't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to check with people to see if they want to partner on things, because it's really helpful often to do that. But knowing about the opportunities is obviously the first step. So hopefully this was helpful.
Yeah, and I'll close out with some just logistics. Thank you all for your participation. I appreciate seeing the chat moving. So next meeting, it was previously scheduled for Juneteenth, and it is amazing that we did not catch that until about 2 months out. So we are pushing it back 1 week, same time, to June 26th. And that session will be on the economics of distribution models. More communication about that webinar change will come soon.
And again, invite your friends. These are open and inclusive working groups. You don't have to be like a longtime anchor organization or emergent organization in Central Appalachia. Anyone, farmer, producer, for-profit, nonprofit can join these calls. So we welcome everyone. Spread the word. I will stop talking, Tessa.
All right. Bye, y'all. Thank you for being here.
Bye-bye.